and welcome to the Improvisors podcast, a podcast where myself, Neil Thomas, co-host Kevin James up there, talk with improvisers about their practice of improvisation.
This is a one-take recording. We're going to call it lo-fi. It's also a part of developing an archive over time of improvisational practices. And today, actually, I'm very excited to say that today we have Dianne Reid from Adelaide, Australia.
Good morning, Dianne. Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you.
Improvisers podcast. How are you going?
Excellent. Great to be here. I'm feeling primed. I'm feeling in good company here with the both of you and in the trajectory so far of the podcast history, which I'm sure is going to become a worldwide sensation.
Yeah. Tell us where you are. Where are you? It's such a space.
I'm at my local studio, which is actually the Henley Sailing Club, overlooking the ocean. They're cutting sand at the moment. And, it's one of those nice little function places. You're not supposed to have bare feet on the floor, but don't look at my feet and you can have bar, it's locked, and functions, but a lovely floor, wooden floor that enables a bit of practice and keeping oneself physically and imaginatively alive. Oh, are we all dizzy now?
Little last one moves.
Well, Dianne, we've made a start, so let's also make another start and ask you the first question, of course, and it really is to do with improvisation, your background, what drew you to it, and maybe certainly from my knowledge of you, improvisation is just one part of a very wide and varied background. But this podcast focuses a little bit on the improvisational aspect. So are you willing to talk us through something about your history overall and where improvisation fits in and around it?
Well, I think the first time I ever really had improvisation in a performance, a section of improvisation, was probably about 2003. So I'd already had, quite a career as a dancer. That's my main background, although I trained in drama and creative writing, communication studies before I trained in dance in Adelaide. Yes, so there was many D's involved. Dance from 3, drama as a degree, then dance as a degree. Took me then to Dance Works Company, working as a contemporary dancer for several years, full time, back in the good old heydays, where you actually, were employed all year as a dancer. And I guess as a contemporary dancer, improvisation was always part of our process in generating material, especially working with Helen Herbertson, who's the artistic director when I was there. There was a lot of task-orientated material, and there was always sort of a sense that in performance you were available to accidents or to interact with the space, because often we're not in a proscenium arch. So the spirit of being in the moment and available to what's happening around you was always part of my work as a dancer. But I've always been interested in the multidisciplines of working with drama, working with voice and with the body, and considering how it's viewed. So all of those different textures are what I'm interested in. And I think when I'd always been interested in the cinematic, in the potential for working with film. I'm getting there, roundabout way I'm getting to improvisation, that it gave you this different access to the body, to the person, the intimacy of it, the ability to shift location, physically and imaginatively. And also I was wanting to work with video because I wanted to hold on to my history as a dancer, you know, especially with contemporary small arts companies. You do a season, maybe 2 weeks, and that's it. So you work for a long time on something that dissipates. So I started finding out how to not just be a little blurred spot on the screen, but to work with cameras as audience, to use that to bring the audience closer to the work. And as I started working with video a lot, it became apparent that you needed to be able to improvise. You couldn't just, to work with set material that you repeat over and over and over wouldn't come to life in the same way as being available. So I really started working with improvisational scores in camera and then built that out into performance. And soon after that performance I was talking about, which involved video projection and moving in and out and video on the body. So I was starting to try and bring all of those textures together into a live performance. Soon after that, I started working with the Little Con Collective, which was, I think David Corbett helped set it up, but primarily Sean McLeod, Paul Romano, Joey Lira, Anne-Marie Ellis, they were doing contact together then, Grace Walpole. And it was a monthly performance with those core members, and then we'd invite different people as guests monthly for 5 years. So that was a really great way to build a practice and to build relationships with other improvisers working in different forms. I just take a breath now. So I guess, you know, also as you become more mature as an artist, especially as a physical practitioner, improvisation makes so much more sense because you're working honestly with where you are, and you're recognizing, you know, bringing the cinematic back in, that you can find the virtuosity of a small movement. So it takes your attention to different places, and you can access different experiences and material that you've carried with you, memory, real experience, muscular memory, becomes a way to sort of shake out all this great stuff that's there.
Just before we talked, I binged on Dianne Reid online, and it's an incredible archive. I think there's like 71 videos on video.
I know, it's ridiculous.
And I mean, it's just extraordinary. And I was talking with Kevin as I was going through them. I came to one which was the 10-year commemoration or celebration of your work with Mel. And it just grabbed me. It grabbed me by the, you know,
by the balls of your feet.
Yeah, by the balls of my feet, and by the heart, really. And it brought me to tears. It was such a beautiful, it's such a beautiful thing to have online, and not having experienced your working relationship with Mel live. It was really a really wonderful thing to have that as part of the archive. And I wondered whether you could talk about that the relationship over that time and what that was like.
Yes, well, I think that was a sort of a turning point for me, was working with other bodies. I mean, I initially made a film with Weave Movement Theatre, and we worked a lot with improv and building that film together. And you learn to, it's almost like a permission to look at the curiosity of other people's bodies, to fall into other ways of being and time frames. And I met Mel because I was asked to choreograph a play she was in, which was about women in wheelchairs. And anyway, they wanted to, she was the star of it, and she wanted to, they wanted a, it was about relationships and people with disability becoming parents. So all of those issues, and they wanted to have a making love scene and a birthing scene. And her partner was an able-bodied person. It was Jonathan Sinatra, in fact, another improviser. And I said to Mel, well, you know, both of those things I think would be better out of your wheelchair. Would you like to get out of your wheelchair and we'll see what you can do on the floor? And she sort of looked at me for a while and then did this very slow movement, which was like really amazing to watch, to gradually get out of a chair down to the floor. And afterwards she told me that she had never done that before. She had at one point in her life, she sort of stopped getting out of her chair and just lived there. So suddenly this world opened up to her. She really got into doing some dance after this play, and we just started a dance practice together, and which was amazing because, you know, I had to find different ways of working. And because things take more time for Mel, just everyday things, it really makes you shift your whole rhythm and attention. And how do you work over duration in that way? Or how could you support her body safely through to the floor? So I discovered all these great new listening capacities and physical capacities of working as a duet. Well, people that collaborate as duet, you know, those wonderful partnerships, Andrew Morrish, Peter Trotman, or David Corbett, Jacob Lira, that way they have of really listening and trusting and developing tools together to survive and create in the moment. So we continued working. I came to Adelaide for a couple of years, but we still were working sort of back and forth. And then I came back 2013 to Melbourne to do my PhD, and she sort of became part of that. So I built her into my performance work, which is site specific and interacts with the audience and works with video projection as well. So she was built into a part of that. And we'd done some performances with Jo Quayle, a cellist from the UK. We just went to a concert of hers once and thought she was amazing. And then she was sort of not so famous then. She came back and we said, oh, can we do a performance together? So we sort of built our performance work up and filmed all that. And then I felt like this is a really unique sort of relationship, and there's been a lot of stuff happen. You know, we traveled to India and performed together, and just traveling in India together was amazing. But so then I thought I really would love to make a documentary about it, but because I feel this sort of thing is what should be on TV and not those ones that tend to perhaps be a little bit like this about it, to be sort of real and not be, you're so amazing. So we made that together, and I really worked hard to try and build her voice into it so that it wasn't me narrating over, or to bring the audience into her speed and to see some of the relationship. It won Best Dance Film in Toronto. So that was good.
Diane, I'd seen you and Mel perform at Cecil Street many times on those events we used to arrange there, and I think at Dan's house as well, and have such rich, strong memories of those events. So it's great that it's been captured and it's there on video. But I'm just wondering, we could talk further about that, but maybe we should have called you Doctor from the beginning. Just wondering
Oh, yes.
if we didn't do that. Your doctorate, which was spread over quite a few years at Deakin, is there anything you'd like to say about that in relationship to improvisation and performance? Or do you want to maybe forget about that?
Oh, no. I can't forget. It wasn't that many years, Kevin. I was quite efficient.
Are you
3.5,
suggesting that perhaps it was you're interested in, Kevin, was the writing of the PhD improvised? What were the actual process of writing? Were you improvising while you were writing?
Well, I did try to bring the poetic into the context of the writing, and I wrote a few papers which became chapters of the exegesis that, you know, looked at things I called impro cinemania, where I'm bringing the tools of screen dance into the live performance. Yeah, I really wanted to try and keep that as alive as possible. So there is a lot of use of poetic text and using all the practices that I use as a creator, which is, you know, physically moving, reflecting in writing, then maybe the writing informs the edit of the filming, or, you know, so that they all intersect with each other. I had made this solo performance back in 2012 for Fringe here in Adelaide, and I found these underground tunnels under this hotel next to the Adelaide Town Hall, and so I did a performance in this tunnel, and it was all improvised, and I had a small section of video projection when I opened a door that came onto me, but pretty much it was just me and, you know, 12, 15 people in this dirty tunnel, and I felt like, and I took it to Edinburgh and did it also in just a little hotel room. It was just a black hole, nothing. So it's just you and the audience. Sometimes I put chairs facing each other. Sometimes I'd just be lying on the floor with a chair on top of me when they came in. But I felt like there's something here that I really want to. I started adding a little bit more video projection, but it was the interaction with the audience and what permission can I bring them into the performance with me, how to shift their perspective of how they view, like you would with a camera. So trying to make them into a camera, change their witnessing experience and their relationship to my body and their own bodies. So that became the PhD. I started to develop that, and it went into a train carriage in Ceres Environmental Park and in this long corridor in the Abbotsford Convent.
Yeah.
And I've always incorporated poetic text that might come before or after, and bring it back into the scheme of things. Mel and I had little speakers hidden in wheelchairs with text that we'd written, animated into other voices, so that the wheelchairs became alive as well. Yeah, I think the capacity to shift all those disciplines together helps to keep you alive and available to something else, so you can have a structure that allows things to occur. Bubble up.
I think I just interrupted a little before, but I was going to make one passing comment. I think you hold a very unique place within the improv world, in the sense that you do work multimodally. You do work with a range of disciplines. I think you're a real explorer, especially of relationship with audience. You've worked in a caravan, which Neil and I had spoken about earlier as
Oh
well.
yeah.
And you tend to often break many of the conventions, not that and rules, even in the improv world. You keep on exploring beyond the accepted. And would you like to say anything about that, about what keeps your practice alive, how venturing forth is something inherent in your work, as is well evident now?
Mm. Yeah. Well, I think it's the playfulness of how I can shift your perspective as a viewer and how I can interact with you. I've always enjoyed contrasting humor and drama. I feel like if you can open people's bodies with laughing, then you can take them to some darker places more successfully. I've done a lot of street performance, but I think what keeps me alive is that play with audience. I love teaching. I've done a lot of teaching, and I always think of a class or workshop as being like a performance. So I feel the build of it over the trajectory of the time, how you can lead people and not stopping and starting, but making it into something that's continuous, that moves the attention from you to them. And I think that's what I've tried to bring into performance, is to give them that experiential thing. But music is a big stimulus for me. I'm very musical. The idea of rhythms, and I think that's what drew me to editing. I love it so much because it is about rhythm and melody and tone, and I love what tone can evoke in you physically. A chord can bring something physically out of the body. So I always work with music when I'm in contexts where I don't have music, because a lot of improvisers don't. And you might be, like at precipice, suddenly it might be there's a black space and music's not really foregrounded. So then you have to use your imaginative and physical musicality to survive and to generate material. But and at the moment, I'm to Guru Dudu silent disco walking tours, which is completely silly and wonderful, and brings together all those things that I love: music, interacting with people and getting them to do crazy things, and site specificity. I said it. and humor.
Like a pig in poo. You're like a pig in poo.
It's great.
I was going to say the other word for poo, but then I thought this is a family podcast.
Yes. So, it's in the Dudus.
Watching the Dianne Reid what a collection of videos, what would that word be? The massive data that's on
Opus.
The opus that is Dianne Reid. It did occur to me, I was struck. Well, I was struck by a lot of things, but one of them was, you have a lovely mix and understanding of just what you were talking about, which is the humor and the disruption, the disrupting an audience, and the depth and seriousness. There's a seriousness around life and real concerns, and a sort of a depth, and you bring the two together, and it makes them both more powerful. So it comes across online. So I'd say to people, go check it out online.
Yes.
We'll leave the link at the back there, and you can you can do it for hours. And the other thing I thought, which I was talking with Kevin about, and it might be something to talk about or not, is that in this time where attention is so sort of fragmented and it's so difficult to sort of get audiences or to have people land, and I was watching the videos and I landed on one, and I just landed, and I realized the big job is to actually just get people to arrive, and that it feels like in your performance work as well, you're in the business of getting audiences to arrive with you into a place which is the present now. So you're sort of dancing that improvisational edge. I don't know if that rings in.
It's great to hear. Perfect. I've succeeded. Now I can retire. That's a very important thing to me, and that's great if that comes across. There was a time when nobody was watching screen dance. Then there was a bit of an explosion of it in the 90s and noughties and festivals, and you had to physically send your DVD or tapes across the world. And then people started to find YouTube and Vimeo, and you had access to audiences all over the world at any time coming into their rooms. But now we've sort of gone into the land of the TikTok, where it's sort of become consumerized and become fragmented, and really, to me, sort of reflects what's happening to people's bodies because of our lives, the tools in our lives, the things that are happening politically in the world and physically. Becomes even more important to hold on to ways I've found to engage in performance and screen work, but also to keep finding how to draw the new bodies and the new viewers back into that place that's more organic. Challenge. That's what the Caravan show, Cabin Fever. It's one of those. I feel like there's something else brewing to, find this next place to go in this world. So it's like it's sort of creative sustainability and matching that with the global issues and the sustainability as a physical artist. That's really important to me. I'm going to be in a flying position at the moment of death. Not to sort of peter out, but to just really keep finding ways to engage. So I've never stopped moving. I have a pretty rigorous yoga physical practice to give me to be available to do the things that my imagination wants to do. The impulses, follow the impulses safely, and to also, subvert those stereotypes about dancers. A dancer's life doesn't extend beyond 30 or 40, and what that is, So the camera and working with people like Mel brings you into different considerations of what you need physically as well. It's always good to be available. You always be ready for the splits. You never know when you're going to need the splits.
Diane, I'm just thinking of your. I'm going to use the word uniqueness as an artist. I guess every artist is unique in their own way. It's a part, I think, of inhabiting that world But you have a particular way, I think, as both artists and especially in the world of improvisation, you hold a unique place. Being able to work in a more multidisciplinary way, being able to engage in very particular ways. And I must say that when I'm present to your work, I find it very impactful. I find it sort of shifts my world on some sort of axis for a little while whilst I'm there, and often for a while afterwards. I find it's very potent in terms of bringing about often a disorientation or a reorientation. And I think you've done some of that today with the way you've worked with the camera and moved around and tipped our worlds over yours, and it intertwines. But there's something very potent about your attention to relationship to others, but to the world and to sort of the global orientation, both in terms of directional and I guess in terms of, as you say, the content of where the world's at now and how you interact it and how that shapes your art practice. There's not quite a question in there. It's a bit of information, but is there anything you'd like to say in response to that? About
I love that you froze just after you said impact for a moment.
Yeah, thanks for noticing that.
When we're at precipice, thank you for that. That's really makes me feel very honoured and good. When we were at precipice this year, I remember you came up to me and said that I liberate you. And that was one of the best bits of feedback I'd ever had. Yeah, it's the joy of risk, of taking chance. I've always been a bit of a risk taker. It's sometimes doesn't pay off. I've been embarrassed or done naughty things lots, but you've got to take the risk. I think that's what I yearn for everyone to do, is to take a chance, risk, find different potentials for themselves.
Right.
And we're often, especially in dance training, I guess you're told to keep it safe and confined and not to mix your genres. And that often depletes your potential and denies you finding who you are, what your voice is, different ways of speaking.
Right.
About toward the end of our chat, Dianne, I'm wondering if there's one last thing you'd like to offer. Oh, I love that.
The honour board. Well, we've got the lectern here. I don't know, I could do a little dance for you.
Sure.
Let the body speak for itself.
Live from the Henley Boating Club in Adelaide, Dr. Dianne Reid.
Damn, the speaker always does that. Goes off. It's like it just wants a bit of positive reinforcement.